So why don't we just start off by going down the line and having everyone introduce who you are, where you work, and you know, a little personal trivia if you've got it. Who wants to start off? Cooper.
Hi everybody, I'm Cooper. I work here at New Relic, 2 floors directly above us. Like everybody, we're hiring. You too could be working right here with that view. So I'm on the BD team here, there's 7 of us. I focus on our platform BD, which is sort of high volume, somewhat transactional, basically people building stuff on or with New Relic, and New Relic is software diagnostics for people that make software. So if you want to build something on or with it, you end up talking to me, and I try to help make you more successful by working with us.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Claire Lee from Microsoft Ventures. That's right, Microsoft Ventures. We appear to be in the corporate venturing business now, so that's very exciting. So I'm a deal maker. Basically, I'm a partner beast, so I run some of the partnerships in that team with the likes of 500 startups and StarTech Stanford and various other fabulous institutions that support startups. I'm also on the fund team, so I'm investing actively in, hopefully, if the legal gods are with us tomorrow, we should close our first Valley investment. That's all very exciting. So yeah, that's what I do. I'd love to tell you a bit more about it too.
Mike Ghaffary, I'm the Vice President of Business and Corporate Development at Yelp. So all deals, partnerships, M&A that the company does. We've got partnerships with Apple, Microsoft, BMW, Lexus, Mercedes. Bought a couple companies recently, Seeking and Quite. Since people are doing the hiring plug, we too are hiring. If you want an email, mike@yelp.com if you're interested. And let me see, I'll do a fun trivia. What I'll do is, if you're interested in working at Yelp, I'll do a 2 truths and a lie, and then you can email me and see if you can guess the lie. So I'll make them all kind of Yelpy. So one is that I broke my hand and then switched surgeons because of Yelp, like I found and actually used Yelp. 2, I wrote my first Yelp review in 2004, let's say, 9 years ago. Yelp didn't exist then. 3, I have a bib that says I yelled my pants. So you guys decide which one is the lie. You probably be that.
And you get hired if you guess that?
Not automatically, but it definitely you get an interview.
Cool. Hi, I'm Jamie Perlman, and I run mobile business development at Box. I've been there for almost 4 years now. Prior to Box, I was at SlideShare for a little while. I helped them figure out monetization in the early days. And before that, I spent some time with Sean Fanning at a company called Snowcap, so also in business development. I can't think of any fun facts or trivia at the moment, but I have a 15-month-old daughter, and I do not let anyone talk to me without hearing about her and seeing a picture.
Picture.
We'll project right now. Hello everyone, good evening I should say. My name is Ryan Aytay from Salesforce, as well now ExactTarget. I've been with the company for a while, about 7 years, and most of my time at Salesforce was actually in corporate development, so feeling a little bit of Mike's background there as well. Recently, about a year and a half ago, moved over to the Marketing Cloud, which was at the time a big component of Salesforce Radiant 6, and then Buddy Media, as well as Social.com. Up recently in June timeframe, and then throughout the summer, we acquired a company called ExactTarget. Actually spoke on a panel at one of your other events with the ExactTarget corporate development individual. Maybe that was about 6 to 8 months ago. Anyways, now I run alliances for Salesforce ExactTarget Marketing Cloud, which is a bit of a mouthful, but overall we are essentially all the marketing technology that Salesforce has to offer today. And fun facts, well, I'll just go with the baby one. I have a 2.5-year-old, which keeps me very busy when I'm not working.
And we missed the fun facts down at this end, so
Well, I definitely win the baby thing, so I have baby Benjamin is just 6 months this week. So babies are good, babies rock, next gen, all that. Fun fact, I'm Irish, lived in England for 15 years, still have a house in Henley, moved over here with my husband who didn't have a job at the time, he just left the military. He basically hacked his way into the industry. He's now founded a startup that's doing rather well, very well actually, and he tells me everything I'm doing wrong, so that's fabulous. He's like my personal critic. But yeah, so that's the trivia in our house. We're a startup and a corporate chick who likes to think that she knows everything about startups.
So I tried to do some recruiting at Burning Man this year. I don't know if I'd recommend it. I'd say just go for the party. Network everywhere else. That's my fun fact.
You made a couple offers, but you don't remember it.
They come to me, they said we had this great offer, and cool.
Awesome. So let's just kick off. I've got a handful of questions, and then definitely want to open this up to the audience here. Let's just kind of start off with what is BD? I mean, BD is a pretty ambiguous term. It means a lot of different things, a lot of different companies. Mike, I kind of had you pegged on this one to start us off. What is BD and what is not BD, and when does a startup start thinking about it?
So it is a difficult question, right? Because I was just giving someone career advice today. They were like, hey, how do I break into business development? And is there a course I can take? I'm like, no, there's no course. There's no major. There's no school. There's nothing, right? And so because of that, people don't even necessarily always know what it is. One way to define it is by saying what it's not, like maybe saying broadly what it is and then carving off a piece. Broadly, it's driving strategic value for your company through a variety of means. Oftentimes that's through partnerships, but sometimes that's through driving a new business unit or a marketing initiative or a new revenue line. But I can tell you within that, since driving strategic value is so broad, a few things it's not. It's usually not sales, right? So one little litmus test I have is if you're rewriting the contract from the ground up, there's a good chance it's BD. Rob was talking about how to structure a deal, and you got template deals. If your salespeople are rewriting the contracts from the ground up, you've got a big problem. Right? Salespeople, it's fill in the blanks, right? Like there's a number, there's a term. Like that's just how to have an efficient sales org that scales. That's the only way it's going to work, right? You do have common units, you don't do that. So BD sometimes might go and do something that looks like sales, try to figure out a formula or a recipe, get it on rails, make it kind of standardized, and then hand it to a team that looks more like sales. Of course, all these names get blended together, and sometimes people where it looks a lot more like sales get called BD, but partnerships is a big element of it. Dealing with other companies, forming alliances, negotiations. It's kind of another best analogy I've heard. It's the equivalent of being an ambassador in the new kind of corporate world, right? So 100 years ago, a lot of these people doing BD now, they might have been diplomats before. Kind of whatever the Dutch East India Tea Company or whatever the first corporation was that kicked off now, most of our life being dominated by companies, and now these people go into BD.
That's interesting. And anyone, feel free to jump in. This is not, Damien, you had more to add, or anything?
So those are actually great comments. To add to that, I would say BD can be what you make of it. It has like 10 different titles, so partnerships, alliances, business development. I'm sure there's a bunch more out there. But one of the things that I've noticed with business development, especially coming from a corp dev background, is that you get to, from like in a corp dev world, you're bringing in new opportunities, and the goal is acquisition, right? In business development, you're bringing in things that could turn into acquisition, could turn into partnerships, may not turn into anything, but there's still value in those relationships. So there are a number of companies that we work with at Salesforce that we may not have a formal alliance that's announced or a partnership, but there's still value there. Maybe they're a customer, maybe they're a future customer, maybe they're a future partner, maybe they're a future acquisition, and so you never know. So in many ways, we're in the business of making friends. I always say it's more effort to keep enemies than it is to keep friends, so it's very important to make sure that you're out, you're networking, as was mentioned before in some of the hacks. You need to make sure that people know who you are, know what you're doing, know what your company's doing, and also you need to be listening to what they're doing as well. Of course, it takes a lot of time, but that's a different point.
Maybe the only thing I'd add, I agree with exactly with what both Mike and Ryan said, but the only thing I'd add is, for me at least in my career, business development has been a long-term focus rather than short-term, and so that goes back to Mike's comment about BD not being sales, right? So selling what's on the truck is your sales team's efforts, and BD is figuring out what goes on the truck next, normally via partnership, not via product development. But we're always kind of experimenting, looking for the next thing, figuring out how you partner with people to find the next line of revenue.
Yeah, I think on that actually I'd add, I agree. I think we're like an early warning system. So more than, if you like, kind of farming, I guess we're out hunting a lot more, and we're kind of feeling it. We know what good looks like. So we're basically kind of flagging to the business an awful lot what we think is a great opportunity. And it's sometimes very hard to articulate that. So we have a new boss at Microsoft. Microsoft's going through some change. You may have noticed that, but the opportunity, you know, with change comes opportunity. Opportunity for us to work with Tony Bates now is really good. So he's running business development and evangelism at Microsoft across all the business units. Incredibly huge function in which, you know, there's a small team of ninjas in the corner hoping that we don't get noticed. Basically running this partnerships with Microsoft Venture. So it's a fascinating time, and I think once you have in your mind that you're this early warning system, you know how to really identify and select, package up, and kind of, you know, publish something, if you like, into your internal customers quite succinctly. Like, this is where this fits. The alignment exercise is probably actually what we spend most of our time doing, trying to act as this liaison, diplomat, you know, translator. How do we package up what's really obvious to us and then make it valuable and relevant to people with, you know, the decision-making powers, really. So it's that early warning system, continuously learning how to bring things into the business and say, we've got to do this. And that's a big feature, I think, of BizDev.
I'll just add one quick thing. I try to make myself very available to folks that are trying to come into the industry, and something I hear often is them thinking they're interviewing for a biz dev job somewhere else, and it's not, it's sales. So for folks who are starting out, be very probing with potential employers and explore what you get to do and what you don't get to do, and do you get to rewrite the contracts, or are you selling widgets? It's not biz dev just because somebody calls it that. It's biz dev because of what you can do. And the best biz dev, you get to choose. You get to chart your own course within the firm, be that early warning system, and bring new things in, and maybe change the way your company does business by what you do. Look for those opportunities, not the selling ones. Unless you like to sell, and then go to sales. It's awesome. Sales is awesome. Not biz dev.
All right, good. You know, I was looking at the guest list, most folks in here, many folks in here are founders or early stage folks at startups. So let's talk about kind of like, when does a startup start to think about BD? You know, most startups are just the first X months of their life focused on getting product built and then getting some customers, you know, product market fit, et cetera. So when does this more strategic vision start to kind of make sense for a startup, and then how does a startup start to build a dialogue with partners, right? So how do you know, start kicking like, what's the...
I'd say from day one, the CEO, the founding team immediately has to think about BD. Even if they don't spend a long time on it, I actually haven't seen a successful startup. Every company I've been involved with, whether I was the co-founder or came in to do BD, the CEO and co-founder themselves, even before ever hiring a full-time person to do it, we're extremely focused on how do I fit into the ecosystem? Am I talking to people? Some of the things that Rob is talking about, putting yourself out there in the networking, founders need to be doing that all the time. And if you're a founder and you heard that, like, oh, well, Mark Zuckerberg was doing it out of his dorm room, so I should just be locked in a room doing product all the time. Yes, you should be doing product most of the time. You also need to make time to get out there and talk to people. Like, it really, not just for raising money, but also just you're part of an ecosystem, even if you don't need partnerships right away. I'd say something that helps out from early on is get a BD advisor, either formally or informally, like sometimes a VC or an angel investor will kind of volunteer and step up. You know, when I was co-founder of Citrix, we had one of our early investors who was a great BD exec in his own right, but was also a big angel investor. And we said, hey, you know, can we use your help? We noticed he was really, really good. And we said, can we just make this formal and actually give you even more equity than your investment? if you come on and do a real engagement for us, fly out to California more often and get more involved. And he loved it. And that was instrumental in us locking up all the media companies on the East Coast that he really had a good connection with. So I'd say very early on you want to think about it. And then the question becomes, maybe with your advisor and your investors, you're thinking about it, what's the right day that there is a full-time job for that person? Who that person is when you bring them in. The other thing I'd say is, generally, I've seen startups have more success hiring the kind of up-and-comer BD person that's got something to prove, instead of doing the like super established, big, like frankly against our interest here, like anyone on the stage here, like, yeah, you might get a headline from hiring us for a startup that lasts a couple days, but oftentimes small startups do better with the up-and-comer, unless you already have a relationship with an established BD person, then that's kind of different. But the outside, super well-known BD person sometimes come in and doesn't get along with founders if they don't already know them.
You think the hunger outweighs the Rolodex?
It's a balancing act. If you already have a known quantity of somebody who you know really likes you, believes in you, and thus often will believe in your vision, founder and vision are often so tied together, right? So if somebody already knows you and has that relationship, or you meet them through a trusted source and you really start to click with that person, then going for the big Rolodex person could make sense because they will be hungry for you. But a lot of times a startup founder just doesn't have that. And then they're trying to like sift through resumes and get the person with the biggest sounding resume that they can, and that's not often the right approach. Maybe take a risk on somebody who you either do know or you see great potential in, they might be able to do big things for you.
Is there, and anyone keep going, but is there a stage that a company's not mature enough in terms of, if you have a BD guy out there you hire too early and he or she's out doing deals, but there's engineering teams not there to support it. I mean, can you hire too early? Think about it early, but can you hire too early? You see startups making that?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely not. So I've been at Box for 4 years. Or almost 4 years. My original boss, Karen Appleton, she's been with the company over 6 years. She was employee 9, I think, when the founders of Box were literally living and sleeping and eating and coding all, on one floor in an apartment building. And the doors that she was knocking on 6 years ago are the doors that started to pry open 2 years later when I came on, right? And our companies, for example, Salesforce, right, where she had been knocking on that door for 6 years, actually ended up investing in Box in our last round. And they're an important partner to us. So anyway, I would just say no, you can never do it too early. I wouldn't decide that that's the holy grail and you're going to hire some hotshot BD person when you're 9 guys in a garage and suddenly they're going to do a deal that's going to take you to the stratosphere. I don't think that's the case either, but planting those seeds, if you're in it for the long haul, I think makes sense. And to Mike's point, if it's your CEO probably needs to be doing that if you don't have a BD person. If the CEO doesn't want to do that, or they're not the right person to do that, or they don't have enough time to do that because they're focused on product, then you might consider hiring someone else to do it. Those seeds planted do bear fruit.
Just to add to it a little bit, I think it really depends on the company and the space that you're in as well. So if you need to partner with, let's say, kind of like Rob's business before, you need to partner with a bunch of high-profile social networks. It's perhaps different than if you need to partner with, there are tons of other types of companies that, maybe enterprise software, consumer businesses, etc. I think it really depends. I'm in general agreement that it doesn't have to be a rock star, like, super well-known BD person if you're starting early. My comment is always, everyone's in BD in the company in the early days, and sometimes the people that connect to me and will get my attention or someone else's attention in Salesforce are those that are just consistent but not annoying, and have thoughtful approaches on how we can work together and bring a framed use case like, oh wow, that's a great idea. It's not just a conversation, it's like, have you thought about this? I put this slide together, what do you think? There's a great way we can go to market together. Like someone who thinks out of the box, and I mean, I'm sure anyone in this room would say, you're going to be interested in something like that if someone approaches you that way. Now, the difference there perhaps would be Again, if you're trying to get in and you need that Rolodex, and there are a number of, you're trying to get into Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else like that, or Yelp or any of the companies around here, I think there's certainly value in someone, like a Karen who has a Rolodex that's like multiple boxes, perhaps, or screens these days. Sound old. Anyways, I'm old. The other thing I would mention is the hungry person is the one who's going to take the CEO out, and instead of making sure the founding team or CEO is not wasting his time or her time, but also going to the right spots. And I think it's the BD person's role to make sure that these are the couple of events you need to go to. These are where the right people are, because the CEO or founder maybe doesn't have the time to figure out those key events to be at.
I'd say the counterpoint is there, though. I know the point you're trying to make is a BD person who doesn't know what they're doing, isn't trained well, and the founder doesn't know how to work with them, could wreak havoc on a company. You've got companies that go way too much in the other direction, start signing up all sorts of deals. Rob is talking about it. Hey, engineering, we're building this and this and that, and then everyone just says, okay, I guess this is important. We signed the deal, right? Maybe it's illegal if we don't do this. And so people start thinking as a matter of law, they've got to build all these other products that they signed on to do. Well, so I think there's a few things there, though. The solution is not necessarily, don't hire. To Jamie's point, hire early, but have the guardrails around the person. Have them have the right mentality in the interview process. So like with Yelp when I was brought on, decidedly I didn't have any sort of like a bonus that tied to how many deals I've done. That starts to look a lot more like sales. Like, you shouldn't have a quota on the BD person. Maybe one day later down the line, they've got some clearly defined objectives when you're further along, but in the early days, like with Yelp, they're like, hey, if there's no good deal to do this year on your first year, just don't do any. Like, just don't. And then if there's 10, there's 10. If there's 100, there's 100. So that should be your BD person's mentality. So the metric, especially in the early days, isn't always strike deals. It could be gather market intelligence, find good events, plant seeds and develop relationships, but not necessarily always sign deals that, and then especially that create engineering work. So make sure they know that, I would say, early on.
Hold off on, I definitely do want to talk about how you guys are measured and metrics and how you're judge success. But Claire, did you have more to add, or should we move on?
No,
So, let's keep going because we don't want to cover. Let's talk about how you get the attention of a larger partner. And Claire, let's go for you. You had some interesting thoughts in our pre-chat. How do you get the attention of a larger player as a startup? How do you target the right decision maker? How do you build championship? How do you start the dialogue with a partner like Microsoft if you're a startup? Which, I don't know how many people work at Microsoft, but I wouldn't even know where to begin hunting,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's like a fortress. It's very, very hard to navigate. I think, particularly because an awful lot of it is not written down, and it's certainly not published, so it's not known. It's, I think, pretty much a dark art, actually. I would really caution startups heavily to think before engaging with a corporate. Do you really need to go there? And if so, why? And how much time are you prepared to spend on it? There are a lot of examples of there being very high opportunity costs associated with courting a big brand, and you find after months and months and months and months and multiple meetings and conf calls that there's nothing there. There is no there. So I really think you have to do a lot of research before you, reach out to people on LinkedIn. God knows that tool is awfully busy at the moment. I have to figure out how to turn it off or something. But it's literally, people pitching you all the time. So of course, I guess there is a symptom of there's a general malaise as well in terms of, we've seen that before, and it is, there are an awful lot of people, coming at you. But the best thing you can do as a startup is really think hard about, which bit of it you want and ask for it. There's too many people that just go, I want a partnership with Microsoft. What they really mean is they want us to buy them, which is quite different, And we might be the early warning system. There are instances and examples where our work has led to an acquisition. Of course there is. Actually, there's two at the moment that we brought in as a team, and like being the animals that we are, we were able to spot it and kind of package it up and bring it into the right people. And I'm quite amazed that one of them might lead to acquisition, because that was a surprise. But it's great when that happens, but it's very, very rare. So So I think for startups, I would think, how can you get the low-hanging fruit? Stuff that's not going to cost you anything. Go and, shameless plug, Microsoft BizBar, free stuff, right? Free software, a lot of free Windows Azure to run your business and all that. So it's not hard to get that stuff, which is actually quite valuable. Two things we can really do to help a startup. Help you make more money or save you money. And that's in the save you money category. We can give you a lot of free software and services. Who knew? If you want to have a relationship for go-to-market channels and customer acquisition, very different. And that's where some of the work we're doing has a very big part to play. So we can invest money, but our money actually is not that valuable, because guess what? Money is freely available at the moment, and everyone thinks so. So that's not the big lead. The big thing is biz dev, and everyone keeps saying to me, we want to work with you for the biz dev opportunity, but they've not really thought, they're not asking very specifically for what does biz dev mean to them. So I think there's this, maybe this cloud or haze around it, and I really hate to see startups wasting their time, because it's enormously expensive. It's a day, a week, or even 6 months of your time that you could have been doing something else, and you're barking up the wrong tree. And it's just sad, and I think, so that would be my caution. Think hard before you engage, and if you do, just be careful.
So maybe I can tell a quick hack number 11 of how my previous company, a tiny two-person startup, successfully, quote-unquote, partnered with Google. So big companies are made up of lots of small companies, lots of divisions, and those divisions are made up of people. And we wanted to be on the homepage of the Google Apps Marketplace. And that's a tiny part of Google, but it was a really big deal to us. We knew we weren't going to get there by calling up Google's biz dev or corp dev department, right? We know how it worked. No. So we got to know some of the engineers involved with the Google Apps ecosystem at Google. And eventually the thing we did that really turned the corner for us was we just got active on their help mailing lists, their forums. We helped them do their job. These engineers, part of what they had to do was support other Google Apps developers. We started supporting other Google Apps developers. And then, a couple months later, we asked, would you mind putting us on the homepage of the Google Apps Marketplace? To those engineers, we'd also gone to lunch with some of them, and just building human relationships with people in a giant company. But a little part of it, right? We weren't trying to actually partner with Google. We were just trying to get something done, fairly tactical for us, nothing at all to Google, but it made a huge difference. Our user growth tripled overnight when we got on the homepage there. And when we asked them, they just said yes, well, of course. Surprising you didn't ask earlier. So if you go to partner with a big company, and you're a small company, I don't think you actually try to partner with the whole company at once. You try to partner with a few people in a small division where you really could actually connect and make something happen.
Really good point. I call that being relevant, and I can't tell you that the best partnerships and some of the best opportunities we see come from engineers or product people within the company. If I think about, I'd be curious to kind of hear this across the row here, but everyone gets emails when you're in BD, and it's like, here's our company, this is what we do, we're amazing, we're like no one else, and we want to partner with you. It's like, okay, great, let's have a meeting, we'll talk. Most of those don't go anywhere. If an engineer, or a product person, or even a salesperson, because the customer's asking for something, they come to us and they say, this company's amazing, they're doing really important things, it addresses a customer need that we have immediately, then all of a sudden I'm chasing the partner, or the potential partner, versus the partner chasing me. And I think that's really important. It changes the dynamic, it changes the leverage points, etc. So just keep that in mind. I would say as well, I mentioned this before, but it's all about the use case. And so I think as you're thinking about, proposing a note to, let's say Salesforce or any company up here, there's one approach which people take, which is let's send an email to everyone they know in the company. Those generally always come back to the BD person. And it just kind of looks a little bit odd, just to be honest. It looks better if you have a well-crafted, well-thought-out note. Maybe you meet someone at a conference, you develop a relationship. And again, you know their product well enough where you can pinpoint a use case that you can essentially either mock up or put some thought into. I think that's one of the most important ways to get kind of the hook into the BD team and or the alliances team or whatever they call it.
So totally agree on the product and engineering. Like if any other group within the company is like, hey, working with this company will actually help us do our job, boom, right away now I'm chasing. Basically, for deals that say, hey, we want to integrate XYZ product into Yelp, that's my standard answer is those deals aren't really driven by BD. It's driven by product. Product will tell me they like something. I might show them things, but I'm not going to go forcing them to do product ideas they don't like. I'm generally going to listen to the product team or work with them at least to figure out what's interesting. But that's also like a high class role. So like it is a luxurious position to have something so great that people are clamoring for it within the company. So if you're in the hacky, if you're still early and you haven't figured out how to do that yet, I'd add something to Hack 11 on the relevance theme though that we're all talking about, which is every company's got their thing that they've got out there. So you were talking about the Microsoft tools, Yelp, we've got the Yelp API, right? Content API. Everybody's got something, you know, you've got box platforms, so there's stuff that people want you to use. So read the press, see what they're talking about. If there's a BD person you think you really want to talk about, like go on the company blog or read the press, see what that person has been drumming up, and then go do that. Like build to the Yelp API and be the marquee reference, like implementation. Now you didn't even have to talk to them. And if you come to a company and say, hey, we have the best looking, like, you know, implementation of your API or your content, or like with Apple, if you came out and said, hey, I've got a iOS 7 flat design, you know, totally gone full-blown iOS 7 right at launch, we totally invested in this. I think only like a handful of apps did that, surprisingly. And of course they got featured by Apple, they probably got a call from Apple. So knowing what that big company cares about, if they are that important to you, and double, tripling down on it and trying to stand out that way is definitely a great way to get noticed.
I'll make it super short because so much good advice and I'm really just echoing that. But it is astounding how many people I've worked with over the years will come to me and say, you know, look at Facebook. We should get Facebook to do X, right? Or you know, call up Salesforce. It'd be perfect if Salesforce would do Y for you. And that is the frame of reference and the mindset with which 90% of BD people approach the problem of partnering with Facebook or Yelp or Salesforce. What I want, not what you want, not how I help you, not, you know, not this great need of yours that I'm satisfying, but what I'd like you to do. And it normally dead ends there, as opposed to, and not an invented, I would also, the second thing I'd say is not filling an invented need. So you need to be selective, right? It might be amazing if Facebook would do something for Box, but there may not be a fit, right? And so I need to be honest with myself because to Claire's point, I'll spend months and months and months taking meetings with Facebook. They're going to smile and be friendly to me, but they're probably not going to tell me outright, dude, not a fit. Like, I can't help you. Maybe they won't.
Good. Kind of on the same theme, but a little bit different. You know, how as a startup can you measure the health of a deal? You're starting to talk to Box or Yelp. How do you know a deal is progressing along? How do you know it's progressing at the right pace? That's not dragging out. You know, what expectations should you have that if it is dragging out, it's just the process, not disinterest? And I guess, you know, any hacks to either increase your attractiveness or leverage as a startup that you guys have experienced when working with startups? I have a big question there, but
I'll take that one. My approach, so how you know if it's going well or not, I would say, is whether or not there are real next steps after any meeting, right? Because if they're just kicking tires and taking the meeting, then it's very hard to lock down next steps. So if you've locked in concrete, real next steps, there's some interest there. But one of the reasons why a company may not lock in next steps with you, but still be interested and truly interested in continuing the dialogue, is that especially for a larger company, the decision to work with you ends up being a big decision. They need to go to legal, they need to get potentially finance on board, they need, you know, all sorts of people who need to approve this thing, and they don't even know if they need to analyze whether it's a good idea or not, and put together a business case, which as a smaller company makes me suggest an incrementalist approach. I'm always, when I'm talking with a company larger than me or a company that's going to say, this is too complicated, can't do it right now, I'm always looking for kind of the MVP, right? The minimum viable product that we can do to test a partnership. So you're right, you don't want to integrate with me right now, but you know, in order to sell my solution, but can we do a pilot in, you know, with just one of your sales offices, and we'll handle provisioning manually, just to see if people are really interested the way we think they are. So you're always better off doing something with a partner sooner, no matter how small it is, because then they're a partner, and that'll get you to that next level and that next stage.
Good.
Yeah, I think just to back that up, it's the devil is in the detail. I think once you get to the point where if you've identified and selected someone, you've done your early due diligence, let's say. With us, certainly, we've become a lot more operationally rigorous, and it is quite boring, but we've got the kind of framework and the contracts and the processes and all this. But it's really necessary to be very explicit up front about what the deal entails. And so, once you sign the contract, that's just the start. You have to execute, and it needs to be very. There needs to be a real cadence around how you're going to, check in and find out how are we doing it. Do we both like each other? There's that chemistry thing that Rob was talking about. Is this working for both of us? Are we delivering on the promise of, who's not, pulling their weight or whatever? There was an example that we had with public sector. I mean, what's that phrase? Don't work with children or animals. I think maybe we should add and government. But I mean, so there was a very ambitious project actually run out of the State Department of Global Partnerships, and it was Hillary Clinton's fantastic vision, wonderful woman, really knows how to get shit done, fabulous leader and great visionary. But when it came to, they came to Microsoft and said, look, we have this, great potential to have this multi-stakeholder partnership. At which point, you get the shivers and you think, what's to do what? Very, very ambitious plan in Asia and in Africa to help with entrepreneurship. And we had to keep breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down and say, look, why don't we take some of our processes, how we approach plans and projects like this, and we'll bring this operational rigor to it so that it might actually stand a chance of being realized one day and stand a chance of being successful. And so we did the first ever Demo Africa last October in Nairobi. Very ambitious, somewhat great for the State Department and for the region of Africa, maybe not so much for Microsoft in terms of platform adoption, but it's a good thing to do. But the thing I look back on is that it could have gone horribly wrong, but for the fact that I think we paid a lot of attention to the execution, and we were hammering home all the time with these people that you have to pay attention to these details, the gives and gets, and who's responsible for each piece. So there has to be ownership and accountability and a cadence where we all check in very regularly, lots and lots of communication between the various stakeholders, and that's the only way I think it doesn't go up in smoke.
Two quick concrete hacks on it. One is the reset button. So sometimes you're in the middle of a thing and you kind of it feels like the calls are dragging on, you're just going through the motions sometimes, you feel like they're not really into it, to your point. You just ask people flat out. I'm surprised people don't do this more often. I go, hey, you know what, can we have dinner, or can we get together with the person, I look them in the eye, and I go, dude, doesn't feel like you're as excited about it. Did something change? Because if so, that's fine. But if not, if you're really into this, let's step on this, let's get this done by next month, let's put a deadline, let's just make this happen. Otherwise, we're wasting time for everybody. So that's surprisingly effective. It just I think people get stuck in a rut, and then when you kind of snap them out of it, and life is short, you want to get the deal done or not, it helps. Number two is, when you're a startup and you're trying to get these big companies to move, and there are all these processes, it's hard, and they respond well to deadlines. So something we did really effectively at Stitcher, I talked about with the advisor, we went to the East Coast, go talk to all these media companies, and then we're like, okay, they all said they were kind of interested in putting their news content online, audio to Stitcher. They all were kind of, yeah, that's cool, smiling and stuff, but we didn't know if they would actually do it. And so you have to wait. You can't bluff or play your hand too early, but when our hand was good enough, when we knew and we had a couple anchor tenants, we got TechCrunch in, that was helpful, built up the venture via TechCrunch. Then we said, okay, you know what, boom, April 10th, we're doing this deadline. we're going to do a press release, we're announcing the launch partners, you're in or you're out. And they're like, really? And so about 6 or 7 out of the like 12 that we were looking at couldn't do it on time. And so 5. So 6 or 7 people were smiling and so nice. Oh, no, we can't do that. 5 got in. I cannot tell you how quickly the next 7 like called the day that press release went live. What? You guys are serious? You really like, you're doing the line? I thought we were part of this. I told you the deadline. No, but we didn't realize. And so people really respond to that well, and then they jumped all, we were very easily a month later, and we said, hey, yeah, we're still friends, we still want to do the deal. Do you want to get in on number 2? Because it's really happening, and now you've got a lot of credibility when you hit that deadline that you said you would.
Okay. More hacks for either creating leverage or creating perception of leverage or creating ultimate.
Yeah, so leverage, I think your point's good on the deadline. Also understand where when the company's deadlines are, right? So, we have this big conference coming up you may have heard of called Dreamforce. We have 120,000 people showing up. That's a deadline for me. If you're a partner and you have an opportunity, you want to present it to me, present an idea, present something that would actually, help the company in that sense. It's back to relevance. I would also ask questions. So if a company comes in and meets with me or anyone on the team, and they ask direct questions like, is this interesting? Should we come back to you in 2 months? Just basic questions which sometimes people are scared to ask because I don't know if they're either afraid of saying, someone saying, this is not interesting now, but come back in 6 months. Like those are actually really good dialogues to have, and you'll kind of register in the BD person's mind because you're asking questions that no one else ever asks. Timing is everything, just like it is in M&A, it's also everything in BD. So there's a time when it's the right time to strike, in either direction. I think it's also important just to stay sort of current. Everyone's busy. I hear that excuse more and more these days where I'm just so busy I don't have time to respond to email. Find ways to connect with the person or the people in the company that are important. Have a list. If I'm a startup, I would have a list of like, here are the top 3 partners I want to work with. Potentially, maybe they're big companies, maybe they're mid-sized, maybe they're similar sized, and like figure out in the company who the people that you want to go talk to, and find them. So they may be on Twitter, they may be on email, they may be wherever. Stalking them is an interesting point. I saw that was like hack 7. It's kind of true. Don't annoy them, but if there's an opportunity that seems appropriate, use your judgment, reach out to them. Say, hey, I'm just checking in. We spoke like 3 months ago. You probably forgot about what we do. Just kind of be friendly in that sense. I think that never hurts. There's always, this one you have to be careful with because sometimes people will read through the lines. But if you are let's say you're coming to talk to Salesforce, you're like, well, maybe I'm talking to your competitors. If you do that appropriately and say, well, we would really like to work with you first, or we'd like to work with you in parallel, sometimes you'll get certain people's attention. It really just depends on the situation.
Yeah, on the funding side, the deadline thing is interesting. So it's the company that we met at a demo day, and they did a wonderful pitch, and then immediately surrounded by Sandhill road types, and we couldn't actually engage. So we called them the next day and said, you did a wonderful pitch, we'd love to talk to you. There's probably a lot of synergy in what you're doing. These guys, they didn't return the call, but then they sent us an email saying, we love you too, but we've closed our round. I thought, wow, that's like less than a week, right, from when you pitched. And they said, yes, we did, and we're way oversubscribed. We really don't need it, but thanks very much for asking. And then 2 weeks later, which was this week, we got a call saying, could you please come in? We really, really want to work with you as a strategic partner, but we don't need your money. I said, great, but there's only certain vehicles that I have to work with you strategically, and that would be as an investor, or maybe as something else. And I said, okay, but we really want to work with you. So they didn't take our call, but they closed the round in a week, and that's interesting. I mean, we see this quite a lot now, actually, where basically supply and demand is shifting a bit. But there seems to be, on that front anyway, I think startups have, in some cases, an awful lot of choice. In other cases, not so much choice. But I like the idea that, yes, focus on, well, who are the 3 that you are targeting and why, and be relevant to them. I think on the flip side, things can just drift on and on and on. You have to be able to call a day on stuff as well, and that is something we've started to do a lot more of. Just not renewing things for the sake of it. There's a lot of things there, especially corporate land, where it's like a logo exercise, and you think, that isn't a partnership, there's nothing actually going on. There's no interaction whatsoever. It's literally, I'm paying for my logo to be up there. And that's very prevalent these days, that big brands are using very influential channels and writing huge checks just to get that kind of awareness, which we don't need. But it's kind of fascinating. I think that timing thing is a very important thing to think about.
Good. Let me ask like one or two more questions, and let's get some audience questions. So be thinking of questions. Cooper, you're head of platform. Salesforce is obviously a platform. Box. Pretty much everyone up here has a platform. So let's talk about using platforms as a BD strategy. Cooper, I think you got this thought when we were talking about this. What are techniques for getting platform managers to notice and care about your startup? Is it different? Is it easier to work with a platform or a platform manager than to do a custom bespoke deal with a company?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely easier as a startup. If it's, well, easy means it's getting you the thing you want. And so is it easier? I guess it depends. But I think platform integration plays, using published APIs, using published programs to interact with firms, big firms, is a great way to get in the door. You can hack it a little bit, get friendly with the folks that run the program, work out how to sort of lever it up. You're participating, now get some marketing traction out of it by getting an introduction from the person that you're now friendly with who runs the program to their marketing colleagues, get a guest blog post, get them to retweet your stuff. I think there's a lot of sort of pretty tactical stuff you can do around platform integrations that most companies don't. There's 500 at the time, there were 500 apps in the Google Apps Marketplace, and there were none from companies anywhere nearly as small as ours on the homepage. You can do it if you just hack it a little bit. I think that working through platforms in kind of publicized ways of partnering or interfacing with a big company is a great way to start, but the trick is not letting it end there. Don't just play by the exact rules they've published. Push it forward a little bit more. Get friendly, get some reason that they want to help you, but then ask, just ask. What is it that would help you in return for the help you've given the bigger company? And then helping them look good, right? We at New Relic love partners that integrate with us and help us look good. We in turn promote them more heavily. They in turn get more of what they want, customers and revenue. And it's sort of very synergistic. I think it's a very effective play that's underutilized.
Ryan, I want to actually throw that similar questions around. You've been at Salesforce a long time. Salesforce is a massive platform now, but wasn't always so. It used to be a sales CRM. And have you seen any startups over the 6 or 7 years you've been there, really sort of leverage Salesforce as a platform to hack it, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely. I mean, it's always a good idea if I mentioned the top 3 or the top 5, the companies you want to get close to. You should certainly, if they have an ecosystem that you can join, whether it's Box or Salesforce or whatever it may be, you should max out the capabilities. And I know it's also a time sink, a tax, whatever you want to call it. There's definitely effort that goes into that. But again, if you're on your short list, you should max out what you can do with that platform. That'll get you noticed by obviously people who are out selling the company's products. So in our case, selling sales, service, marketing, etc. Software. It'll also get you noticed by some of the technical people in the program that are running the quote-unquote platform. In our case, it's the App Exchange. Also, and this is kind of to your point before, which was find other ways that are sort of maybe not possible in those programs to integrate. And this comes back to use cases. And so one of the best ways, which I probably should have mentioned before, but if you have some key marquee customers or anchor customers that you can get to be your advocate, there's no better way than to get someone's attention by actually getting the customer to mention you, or to say that it's absolutely critical that you start working with XYZ company because we're talking to them. I know you have an App Exchange integration. What if you could do this, right? And so there's always ways that the company, in our case Salesforce, could work with a partner in a deeper way, right? Which goes beyond, in our case, the Force.com platform. Maybe there's an embedded integration Give you an example. We signed with Buddy Media, which is a publishing platform to a number of different networks. There's an opportunity to bring on a compliance vendor, so we started working with a company called Nextgate, which is a compliance vendor that makes sure that if you're sending out certain types of posts that they're compliant. It's something that you may think of or not think of, but it's actually really important when you have someone like a large insurance company or a large franchise that is publishing things to social media channels across the world. So I think just always max out on what's capable in public, so public APIs, ecosystems, app exchanges, etc. But then go beyond that if you can and be creative. And that's actually what's going to get the engineers and the product teams focused on you in sort of a larger fashion, because you're doing things that are maybe more wild and crazy than everyone else does.
I would say one quick thing on that is, so like I'm hiring for a head of platform right now. Platform almost always is a core part of the BD team. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes slightly different. So you're talking and interacting with the right people if you're going in platform. If you want this big BD deal, start with platform. It's a great way to do it because that's often the only way a smaller startup can work with a big company. So like we just bought this company, SeatMe, that started as a platform conversation. They didn't come and say, hey, buy us. They just said, hey, we think we'd be great on your platform. I said, okay, cool. And that got them a meeting. They started engaging more and more in that, and then it led to them getting bought. So I can't say how often I see that pitch go backwards the wrong way. Hey, your APIs look okay, but there's all this custom stuff we want to build into you guys, so can we get a meeting to talk about that? Do it the other way around. That's the trick. Like just to be the awesome platform partner using the off-the-shelf tools first, then talk about those interesting things you want to do. I think that's and you're talking to the right people. You just got to subtly approach them the right way and in the right order.
Just a quick point to the investment where you can't do everything all at once. When thinking about these platform investments that you make on the engineering side of your firm, consider them in terms of the benefit they're going to bring you down the road on the partnership side. That may be a little bit further down the road, maybe not, but in the very near term they'll be helpful on your marketing side and your customer acquisition side. So your marketing folks are on board, they're excited about the opportunity here. That helps justify the engineering investment. If you get it to pay off in 2 or 3 or 4 ways, there's brand building, there's down the road partnership, there's near term customer acquisition. Ideally, you're actually generating revenue from selling to the customers that you're getting from the platform you just integrated with. Usually, I think you have to have it pay off in multiple ways for it to justify investing in, as opposed to investing in your product exclusive of platform integrations.
Awesome. Let's do some audience questions. Let me borrow that to share. Who's got one? Sir, you were first.
First of all, Mike, for you, there is a small hack to your trivia, which you might want to block now, that somebody's sending you 3 emails. 3 different answers.
There you go.
It's
all about hacks.
Yes. A quick question. What happens, so we're small startups, right? And many times we want to work with big giants. What happens if you have just the one giant that you have to work with? I'll give you an example. I'm a founder of a company that is doing Lego rentals, and we want to work with Lego, right? There's no other Lego, right?
There's Duplo, but that's owned by Lego.
How you would go about it?
Yeah, for me, I've never gone straight at the big whale first. So I've always, situated with media companies, with Yelp, integrations, I always start small and kind of build up. So you get those reference partners, you learn the template. So maybe there's not another Lego, but ideally if there was somebody else like them who could be kind of a template or a reference, because there's a lot of learning you probably have to do. And the big company, you don't want to kind of screw it up with them, and they often don't want you learning on their dime. There's a flip side to this. Sometimes maybe it's just, I knew this woman in business school who had exclusive deal with Choose Your Own Adventure. Do you guys remember that? Anyone raise your hand if you read Choose Your Own Adventure? I used to love those books. I'm amazed there's not an iPhone, by the way, somebody's startup. So she got, this is 10 years ago, she got the exclusive rights to have interactive DVDs using Choose Your Own Adventure, right, pre-iPhone. It's actually a really good idea. And there really wasn't another Choose Your Own Adventure, there really was. So that other model, you've got to realize you have way less leverage than in that case, if there really is only one kind of horse on the farm. And so you go to them And you probably go down the investment route, for example. You say, look, we've got a great way to extend your product. You probably don't want to do this yourself. It'd be kind of crazy. Let us crazy entrepreneurs, realize that's a bad idea and sink our money into it. But, maybe do a small investment just to get a toehold in case it works. And of course, license this stuff to us. Why wouldn't you? And that way they feel like they have some skin in the game and they get some upside. And that kind of thing works a lot better. And it's just being very deferential and really realizing that you're trying to maximize the size of the pie versus your slice of the pie. That's usually, if there really is only one game in town. But if at all possible, doing some reference smaller versions first, I think would be good. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Good. Who's next? Who's got a big question?
Hi, my name's Laura Pickering. I'm CEO of a startup called NovoWise. We're actually based out of Halifax. My question is, what are the trends that you're seeing that are important to your businesses right now?
Social, mobile, local. Photo sharing too.
Yeah, well, good question. So investment priorities, basically the things that we all care about: embedded systems, IoT, smart cloud services, enterprise, SaaS, and IT would be kind of the big three, I guess, in terms of our investment thesis. But anything that lights up our platform is probably a good thing. Windows, pretty important to our business, so anyone who wants to put Windows 8, Windows Phone 8 app, we love them. So yeah, I mean, the trends are pretty well documented. Startups that are able to partner with the giant, and the more innovative the giant, I guess, the better it is for you guys. But and if you need an intro to Lego, I know that you want an intro. I'm joking. But it's I think for us anyway, we're hoping to start with the strategic partnerships, actually, place some bets, so that it might get us ahead of some of these trends, and that we're going to be hopefully placing some big bets quite early around some of these market trends. So expect some cool news from Microsoft in that regard. We hope. Back to the lawyer thing.
Hey, what's the typical deal size of Microsoft Ventures? I haven't heard too much.
Yes, we're investing on balance sheet, so we're it's more like the American Express with no limit than a fund that can be fully invested. And we're doing seed round, so it's absolutely 100, 150 to 250 kind of deals. We're syndicating all of that, of course, and all the deals we're doing are with other VCs and angels in the Valley, in New York, in Israel, and out of London and Berlin as well, where we have an accelerator. So if you want to know more about us, microsoftventures.com or on Twitter at Microsoft Ventures.
Ours is quick here at New Relic. Software is eating the world. Yes, everything is either about software or about to be about software. And it seems kind of obvious in what we're doing in it here, but as soon as you go away outside of the tech industry or even outside of this geography, you just realize that software is changing everything quickly. So that's a big trend that we play in. We think is really important.
So, since you said software eats the world, which is a big Mark Andreessen kind of quote he's talked about a lot, I actually wrote a piece on TechCrunch saying software is eating the world, but to a degree, like is software going to eat local businesses and retail was the question. And I actually said no. I mean, to some degree, but not entirely. There's this, $7 trillion of local commerce in the United States. So 100 times the size of online advertising, over 20 times the size of e-commerce is just good old walking into a store and buying something, right? Like people underestimate how big that is. So the big trend we're seeing in local is, hey, you've got $7 trillion sitting there. And if people start bridging the online and offline world, like Yelp has done, right? We've got 100 million users who are looking and walking in and spending that $7 trillion. If you can start to do things to bridge that experience, and so for us that's, ties into platform, right? You go on the Yelp platform, you're pulling in content, and then you can start running transactions and tapping into that. I think there's a very massive opportunity. So local is really like the big frontier, obviously, That's why I came to work here.
BlackBerry can. I'm telling telling you, they're going to come back.
Let's see, you've mentioned, I think I heard everything that's in real time. The only thing I didn't hear, which I would say we're focused on at Salesforce and specifically in the Marketing Cloud, is connected devices, right? So Internet of Things, bringing the one-to-one relationship back and bringing it down, one-to-one is something you've heard in the past, making it real, and it's combining the sort of offline with the online component as well, and bridging it across, multi-channel.
No one said Bitcoin. And Mike, I thought maybe you would have a Bitcoin play somewhere in there.
Ever since the crackdown on the Silk Road, I've been stepping back.
Another question back here. Let's do 2 more questions and call it late. It's late.
Hi, I'm Kenneth Berger. I'm one of the co-founders of YesGraph. We help companies hire by referral. I wanted to return to one of the questions from the prior talk about partnering with potential competitors or people who might see you as a potential competitor to be squashed. We'd love to partner with a lot of applicant tracking systems or with LinkedIn, but there's certainly overlap in these spaces. I just love stories or experience about how to partner effectively in that situation.
I mean, one thing I'd say, if it's a large enough organization, and I'm actually thinking of Microsoft as a great example, there are so many different companies within companies, right? So there are parts of Microsoft that think they compete to the death with Box, and there are other parts that promote us and really like working with us and integrate with us. So depending on the size of the company, you may find there are certain pockets where you do fill a need and they recognize that, and they're big enough to where that sort of thing can happen. The only other thing I'd say is it never hurts to have the conversation. Most people, I think, have the knee-jerk reaction, oh, they're a competitor, we shouldn't talk to them. I mean, even if they are a direct competitor, never in a billion years will they work with you. It is to your benefit to get as much information from them as you possibly can. You want to have lunch with them, you want to have coffee with them, they might acquire you, you might acquire them, you might find out that there is a way you can partner, all sorts of great ways to work together. So I take all meetings.
The ambassador.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is really, so you have to be careful, right? And this is, you're going out, you're meeting with, let's say, a direct competitor in your space. You have to be careful, but you should absolutely have a conversation in my mind. Now, some folks on the other end may not take the meeting or may have sort of the more negative view where they view you in the same light and they actually don't want to be in the same room. I think generally, as I mentioned before, it's always more effort to be sort of maintaining enemies than it is to be maintaining friends and partners. I think it's, again, the data, as you mentioned, getting that is critical. It's always, though, at least in my mind and the approach we take, it's what's best for the customer. You're here to serve a customer with whatever technology you're, whether it's a B2B company or a B2C company, you're there to serve someone. And so if your solution is better by partnering with a competitor and you can both see that value, that's one way to get around it. Again, I think being careful is important. Taking a couple meetings slow, trying to build trust. I also think, you have to be able to trust your partners, like you want to make your customers trust your company. And so I think that takes some time and takes some effort, and that's actually one thing a BD person can help you with, as if you're a CEO or a founder. But I can't think of really an example where it's not a good idea for someone to talk to a competitor.
All right. Did we exhaust that? One more question, and then maybe 2, and then make them quick, and then that's it.
Most of the business development deals that I've worked on have been revenue generating, like data partnerships. Have you had any experience in the nonprofit sector or partnering with a nonprofit? I worked on a hackathon and we won, and now I'm approaching companies saying, this is what we're doing, it'd be great if we could use your services, and making me rethink compared to other things I've done in the past.
So, in my experience, partnering with nonprofits can be very cool and very rewarding. but nonprofit is also a little bit close to the other non-for-profit organization, which is the government. So it can get interesting. I was in trial pay, and I would see these Wikipedia ads saying like, please, please, please give us money. And I knew this great way that they could, generate revenue and keep the user experience. So I would call them, and I was kind of like the guy Jamie was saying, like, till I was blue in the face. I thought I was solving a problem for them, but they wouldn't. I even got to like a Wikimedia Foundation board member who I work with now. He's on the executive team with me. But like, he's like, they just will not talk to you. Like, if you have the word commercial in your like title anywhere around you, if you're connected on LinkedIn to someone's commercial, like they will not talk to you. It's like, wow, okay. So that was one kind of experience. I love Wikipedia. But there are other nonprofits. We talked to the American Cancer Society and Red Cross, these other nonprofits that actually realize that commercial partnerships and partnerships with internet companies can be very beneficial. In social gaming, there were a bunch of people who, I don't know if you remember, there was this Zynga thing. I forgot what it was. They did a big campaign that was very successful around that. So I think there's actually going to be a lot more around, because if you think about it, nonprofits are barely scratching the surface of allowing their users, all these people, like all the people in this room would probably have some sort of nonprofit or charitable thing they'd be interested in, and they would connect if it was just easier and time shifted and bite size and could fit in a small way into their day. And there's not these great touch points right now. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but can feel like working with the government sometimes.
Absolutely. I think there are some great examples of very innovative .orgs. Startup Weekend is an example of a partner of ours that's not for profit. Indeed, StartX, the University Accelerator, is not for profit, 501c3. And look at what they're doing. I mean, it's really transformative if you consider, especially if you go to the StartX demo day, which I would highly recommend. It's quite a phenomenon. And the types of companies that are coming out, clean tech, med tech, biotech, it's really amazing. Hardware companies, of course, they're securing a lot of investment very quickly. That's my earlier story. But I think it's fascinating that Startup Weekend, as an example, have come so far in the 5 years or so that we're working with them. It's great to see Google, all in, Amazon, Microsoft, everyone in the industry is really engaged in that organization. And I guess that's a very good case study. How are they so attractive and why? And how did they grow so fast? And how did they become such a phenomenon? And indeed with StartX, I think another fascinating case study to see, why are they so good at what they're doing? It's really remarkable what they've managed to do. They've just announced a new fund with Stanford. They've already invested, several $1 million in companies. So quite an amazing example. I think the commercialized, brain, if you like, someone who really gets it, running a not-for-profit is your friend as a startup. But I think you need to spot the StartXs and the Startup Weekends and avoid the other types of .orgs that are really dinosaurs and never will innovate.
I think that should wrap us up. So maybe a big round of applause for